Good morning. Welcome to another Kenny Cars and Coffee, or Cars and Coffee with Kenny. The jury's still out on that, but if you're a car guy and want to learn more about your car, you're in the right place, because today we're going to talk about brakes. I'm Kenny Brown. Over the next, it used to be half hour, but now it's an hour. I'm going to try to share with you some of the extensive knowledge I've gained in my 40 plus years of motorsports and building cars, and so you can do a better job of working on your car, understand more about your car. So today, as I said, we're going to talk brakes. This is a really big subject. I don't know if I'm going to get it all in, but we'll do the best we can. And we've got some questions already that we can talk about. And let's see, we always start out with some, my picture. Anybody notice picture change? Somebody was saying I need to change the picture. Well, this is another works I have by Nicholas Watts. And this is Jimmy Clark in the Lotus 4967 at the Zandvoort Grand Prix, where it was the first outing for the Lotus and Cosworth, and he kind of won the race going away, and he just put Cosworth on the map, and kind of like the stories it was written for Cosworth. It's also signed by Keith Duckworth, who's one of the original founders of Cosworth, and a Dan, somebody I can't read, and somebody thought that might be one of the mechanics, so it's kind of cool. Yeah, I love this guy. I've got a number of his works, and you'll be seeing him in weeks to come. So talking about brakes, and we've got, I see we always start out with some quick hitters, and we got some shout outs today. Mike Piercy invited the Christian Car Club. Histofer invited the Mustangs of Bulgaria, along with some others. So, man, this is, if you got a favorite club or car group that you think that might gain some value and learn something from what we do, certainly invite them. We'd love to have them. The more the merrier. Let's see, Lon sent in something. This is kind of interesting. Last week I talked about a lightweight clutch, and if you put a lightweight clutch like the new super lightweight clutch we've got for the Coyotes, it a whole bunch less mass than a standard clutch, and you've got to recalibrate the engine. I said last week you have to take it to dealer. Well, Lon reminded me, and it's a good thing because I knew this, but I just forgot, is that if you've got an SCT tuner, it's called a crank relearn, and it's under the special functions on SCT tuner. So if you know anybody that has an SCT tuner, X4, then you can do the same function. It takes about 10 minutes, and what it's doing is the engine crank trigger has to learn the difference in mass between a great big heavy clutch and a super light clutch. And, you know, we talked about the benefits of a light clutch. It's less rotating mass, revs quicker, makes more power. I mean, it's good, everything. And the new clutch that we've got from Quartermaster is pretty awesome. It's a super heavy-duty twin disc, good to, up to, I think, 1,000, 1,200 horsepower, and it has pedal feel of almost a stock Mustang. So Quartermaster's been closed. I think they're about to open up. They've been in Illinois, and we haven't been able to get anything out of Illinois lately, so that might be coming up. So if you're looking for a new clutch or someone is, let us know. We can get you kind of hooked up. Here's some of the other questions we've got. Thoughts on 4-piston versus 6-piston? That completely depends on which 4-piston and which 6-piston. The theory behind 6-piston is that it spreads out the pressure on the brake pad over a bigger area. And if you've ever looked inside a 6-piston caliper, there's 3 different size pistons, because there's like pressure, gas buildup. That's why we talk about slotted rotors. We'll get to in a minute. And that's so you get even pressure on the brake pad, so they wear evenly. And it depends on the 6-piston and 4-piston. Like the 4-piston and 6-piston, like come stock from Ford on like the Boston GT. I mean, they're a good Brembo brake, but they're not like the Brembo GT aftermarket system. It's designed for OE. It comes with a single, just a single rotor. Where we recommend, if you're going on track, to ditch that and get our 2-piece slotted rotors. They save weight, they cool better. They got the slots, so they let your brake pads wear better. Let's see. Oh, we got Chase. I can't read Carrie's writing. New Speed Therapy member. I guess we got a lot of New Speed Therapy members, and if you're new, welcome. We love to have you. Some of the questions we've gotten in, what brake fluid do I recommend? We'll get to that. How often should I bleed the brakes? Is there a way to adjust brake bias front to rear on S197? Does changing the bigger brake package front or rear alone affect brake bias? And switching back and forth between street pads and race pads, can you use the same rotors? Well, I'll start from the bottom up. Can you use the same rotor for street pad and race pad? It depends on the compounds of the street and race pad. If you're running a heavy metallic brake pad and you're running sort of a soft organic street pad, there's a little bit of a not too good, because the metallic might pick up on the street pad. If you're running like in our G-Lock series, they've got street pads, the race pads. It's a lot better transition on the rotor. So it's kind of depends on what pads you're running and what rotors you're running. Let's see, does the bigger brake package change the brake bias? Yes or no? We've been working with Bear for I can't tell you how many years. They've been really good to us. We've been good to them. They've got great products, and better than that, they're great. They're great people, which counts a lot for us. And they got great customer service. So that's why we talk so much about Bear. I mean, it's just a great package. Hal, Gabby, Rick, and Rick. I mean, they're all great people. Coffee time. So when you get one of the big brake packages, the piston size is engineered to have the same displacement of the stock piston in your brakes, so that the volume is the same. If the volume is the same, then it's going to have absolutely no. It's going to be transparent to the car. So yeah, big brakes. I mean, I love big brakes, and we're going to get into that deeper. Let's see. Is there a way to adjust the brake bias front and rear on S197? No. The reason for that, it's ABS. It's electronically controlled. And it adjusts the bias by itself. That's why it's so easy to do trail braking with an S197, because you got the ABS helping you along. Now, I just talked to somebody yesterday that was really starting to get, he's driving faster and faster and braking harder and harder. He's starting to get the, the bump, 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 the ABS feedback on braking real hard. There's an easy solution for that in the S197, that's to use the Boss S ABS module. It just unplugs, plugs in. It's calibrated for high deceleration rates and super sticky tires. So that'll help that. Now, the disadvantage is that you will lose some dash function because it's set up for race cars, but it could be as easy as, you go to the track, put the race ABS in. When you drive on the street, put the street one back in. It's pretty easy crossover. As far as the bias, I mean, the bias is all governed by the ABS module. I mean, it thinks about it. It does a better job of bias than probably any one of us could ever do. How often should I flush the brakes and brake fluid? Let's get into brake fluid. What kind of brake fluid do I recommend? I recommend any really good 600 brake fluid. And what 600 is it's the dry boiling point. Now we do two. We have two. We've got the Motul, which says right on it's backwards, but you can just pretend you're reading through a mirror. It's a 600, so it's got a really high boiling rate. We also have the Bear, which also has a dry boiling point, I think 608. So those are the two we like, just simply because your brake fluid is not going to boil. If you run a standard brake fluid on track, it's not set up for temperature, and temperature is everything in brakes. What's going to happen is, after a couple of hard stops, the brake fluid is going to be overwhelmed. It's going to start to boil, and you're going to come up to the next corner and you hit the brakes. Nothing, it goes right to the floor. So that's why it's important to have good high performance brake fluid. And if you're going to do it, get the best stuff, and that's 600. How often do you bleed? A lot. I'll bleed the brakes at the end of every day at the track, specifically the fronts, not so much the rears. The rears don't get quite as hot as the front. At least anybody's running an OE caliper, OE rotor, or even the 14-inch rotor with an OE 14-inch upgrade that we had for the back with the OE piston. I do that maybe once a weekend, but I do the fronts every day, and you can see it doesn't take much. You just have to pump it a little bit, and as soon as the fluid sort of turns clear, you're done. That's all you have to do. But it's always best to have fresh brake fluid, because brakes are important. So this leads me to a quiz. Brakes. What do you think the most important function of brakes are? It's a trick question. Everybody will say, well, to stop the car. Well, yeah, it's one of the, you can stop the car either with a wall, a guardrail, a fence, or a tree. Those are not really the preferred methods of stopping the car on the track. It's the preferred method is using your brakes. So the main function, most important function of the brakes is making heat. And what I mean by that is your Mustang is like, or Camaro or any other car, is going to be like, say, 3,800 pounds of kinetic mass moving down the straightaway at 120 miles an hour. And the only way to slow that down is to hit the brakes. And when you do, the brakes turn kinetic energy into heat energy. That's why the brakes get hot, because they're turning kinetic energy into heat energy. And brakes do get hot. That's why brake pads, brake fluid, it's all really important if you start doing track. I've got like 29 different brake pad compounds to choose from. But of those, we've got 2 suppliers, and there's maybe 12 that I'll use the most. And it's when it comes to brake pads and braking, it's all about temperature. Because brakes, when you're looking at a brake, you're looking at three things: friction, temperature, and wear. Now, a street pad are designed for low temperature and maybe 1 or 2 panic stops. So they're going to have a great friction at a low temperature and great wear. As soon as you start to elevate that temperature, like on a street pad, out of its range, then you're going to get accelerated wear, and you're going to get more heat and accelerated wear. The worst thing to do is go to your first track vet with stock brake pads in there. You're looking for a disaster. Now, if you're just going to putt around and do like touring laps, that's fine. But if you're really going to start driving, the brake pads are going to be overwhelmed, and it won't take very long to just blow them up. I can't tell you how many times we've been at like driving events in the novice class where in the first morning, somebody just completely ran out of brakes because they had stock pads. You have to have brake pads that are equal to the temperature that you're running your front brakes on track. Now, if you're just a novice, your temperature is not going to be that great. If you're intermediate, your temperature is going to go up, and your advanced temperature is going to be even higher, which means you've got to match the brake pad compound wear and friction to that heat range. Now, on my car, I drive, I drive pretty well, and I can tell you that my rotor temperature is always in around 1,200 degrees. So you're saying, well, how do you know that? Well, I got to pull this over here. This is my rotor, and hey Joe, and you can see this little red patch. Well, that's brake temperature paint. And the thing about brake temperature paint is it starts at one color, and as the heat builds, it'll change colors. It's pretty slick stuff. It used to be we had to have by 4 different types of brake temperature. So as each one kicked off, you'd know what your maximum rotor temperature was. But the Genesis stuff is just awesome. It's just one color. And it comes in, it's pretty simple to use. You just shake it up and paint it on. Now, I recommend you paint at least 2 sections of rotor so you get a good idea what the temperature is. And they give you this little handy dandy chart. Now, this is something new. You can probably see that. It shows the different colors as the rotors get hotter. So you always want to have a brake compound that works at a temperature above what your rotor temperature is. Now mine, I'll get my little chart over here. Mine consistently runs right here. And you can see that in the 11 to 1300 range. It just always stays there. Now my rear brakes are down here in the green range, and if you're running like stock rotors, you're going to be maybe down here in beige. So that's why it's important to match your brake compound with the temperature that you're racing. For like novice, I'll just go down and give you some examples. You know, for a novice, the street performance pad is like up to 800 degrees. Well, I mean, if you're just first time on track and novice, you could get to 800 degrees because you're not really going to know about really hard braking yet. If you're sort of a novice, but maybe drive a little harder, have like a good brake package, there's another sort of street track pad that goes up to 1,000 degrees. Then we start getting into the track pads, and the first level of track pad goes up to 1,250. That'd be kind of like an intermediate guy that isn't really into super threshold braking. And then we get into like advanced, or somebody that's into hard threshold braking. And we've got the ones I use the most. This one goes to 1,400 degrees. Kind of use that on the back. And this other one goes to, turn the page, this goes up to 1,800 degrees. And then we go up to our race pads. This goes up to 2,000, and one that goes up to 2,100. So getting the right brake pad for the temperature that your brakes are running is really, really critical. Because if you don't have the right compound for what you're doing and temperature running, they're gonna wear out fast. You could look at a high performance street pad that's good to 800 degrees, and you can use them. But what's going to happen? The temperature's going to go up, which means your friction is going to start to go down, and then your wear is going to really accelerate. So on most pads, as temperature go up, wear increases and friction goes down, except when you get into the range. The pads are designed for a specific temperature. Now, I run like 1,200 degrees, and the pads that I use the most, have been using the most, are the DTC 70s. That's kind of a race pad for Hawk, and that's good to 1,600 degrees, and optimum range is like 1,200. So that's kind of like matching the pad for the application. Now, if we were going to go, serious racing, there's some other pad choices we do, because racing is like you're either on the gas or on the brake, and you're doing threshold braking, getting as deep as you can in the corner, braking as late as possible, which makes a lot of heat in the brakes. Oh, here we go, carry again with the things that I don't remember. The thumbs up thing. God, you think I remember this by now? If you like Cars and Coffee, give us some thumbs up. That kind of helps Facebook see that we're relevant, and they kind of spread it around a bit more. And also, there goes one of those. That's not a heart. That's a wrench that just happens to be shaped like a heart. So we like those heart-shaped wrenches and the thumbs up. That helps a lot. And if you're just joining us today, again, I'm Kenny Brown, and I got over 40 years experience of building cars, motorsports, racing at the professional level, and I know a lot. I've learned a lot. I don't know everything, but I'm more than willing to share as much as I can with you, so that you don't make a lot of mistakes that I did. And like I said, we're always out to improve your driving experience. And if I can help you make fewer mistakes, then that's I've done my job. So we're talking about super high temperatures on brakes, and you got to keep them cool. Now, if you're getting it, once you're past novice and getting it intermediate or advanced, you have to have brake ducts. You've got to get that fresh air to the brakes. And the reason for that is that if you don't, the temperature is going to skyrocket. And there's a couple of things I'll show you on this rotor to be aware of. In rotors, now you see this is slotted. Every single rotor that we use or sell is slotted. In fact, we even have our own special part numbers at Bear, because we only use slotted rotors. I know the popular thing is like the drilled and slotted. Here's the problem with drilled. When they start running super high temperatures, the cracks will start at the drill points, and they won't last very long. Now, I know that you'll see drilled rotors on Porsche. Well, that's a completely different type of rotor. I mean, those holes aren't drilled; they're cast in, and the steel they're using is super high grade. So they have a tendency to work for like track. But even so, you look at any race Porsche, it's got slotted rotors. Another important thing about slotted rotors is you always want this slot pointing forward, and there's good reason for that. Number one, well, first of all, what the slots do is actually, you pretty figured out they help get rid of the brake dust. But the other important thing is when you push down a brake pads on the rotor, it builds up gases, and as it builds up gases, the gases at the back are more than the front. Back in the Celine days, I mean, our brake pads would come off looking like a wedge, and that's because we couldn't use slotted rotors, and there was gas buildup at the back, which means you're losing braking at the back. And so these help reduce the gas, and also the different piston size helps keep it flat. But also, if you look, you can see the inside, this is the rotor's going this way, and the air is expelling outwards this way. If you were to look at the other way, if you had the rotor this way, you'd be scooping air in, and that would be creating heat in the middle. And what you want to do is you want to put as much air as possible into the eye of the rotor, because brakes cool from the center out. So that's why on my brake ducts that we have for SN95 and S197, it's a 3-inch duct, and it's oval. Would you go grab me the brake duct that's in the other room?
Sure. Can you answer Jim Flattery's question? He's on track right now, and I think it's probably one of his first time out with his boss on track. And he's asking if it's best to run with advanced track off.
Jim's asking, he's on track with his boss, whether best to run with his advanced track off. You definitely have to turn off traction control. If you don't turn off traction control, you're going to burn up your rear brakes all the time. As far as advanced track, it depends on how comfortable you are with the car. I mean, if it's new to the car, I wouldn't turn the advanced track off yet. As you get a lot more of experience with the car, you can turn advanced track off, but be careful, because the advanced track is going to cover up, any little things that you might be doing. The car is going to correct for it. So when you do turn advanced track off in your first couple of sessions, just be very cautious and build your speed up, because there's not going to be anything there to catch you except you. Like I say, the more you drive, the more you learn, the more muscle memory you have. Like you ever watch these like Formula One guys, and how quick they react. I mean, they react like that to the car, even a little twiggle. I mean, that's all muscle memory. I mean, they don't have to think about it. They just automatically do that. And you got to build up to that. But what I'm getting back to is advanced track off, be cautious, build your speed up gently. I know unlike the S550 cars, most of the crashes I've seen with S550s have been backed into the guardrail. And typically it's when somebody turns all the nanny things off. And when they do, I mean, the back of the S550s get really loose. We had a customer at Road America that was doing really, really good. He was just really knocking down some good times, passing a lot of people. So he decided to turn all the nanny stuff off. So it was like all on his own. He didn't even make it through the first lap, and the back of the car got loose, and he backed it into the wall. So, I mean, those nanny things are there to help. On a 550 car, take it all the way up to, the super control. You have to take traction control off. You just have to do that. So, yeah, that's kind of a long way to get around to the answer. Now, here's what's different about my brake ducts is that you can see they're oval. Now this is for S197, and the reason they're oval, I'm going to push you down again, don't get sick, is that when I go on here, maybe go up here you can see it better, all the air is going into the eye of the rotor where you want it. And so we take a 3-inch duct and we oval it down, so 100% of the air that we're pulling off the front of the car is going into the eye of the rotor for more efficient braking. Now, when we're doing the Mustang Challenge cars, they came with the Ford 4-inch brake ducts. And the 4-inch brake ducts were so big that about half of the brake duct was on the rotor, the other half was in the eye. And when we ran back-to-back testing, we had two cars. We had one with my brake ducts and one with a Ford. The rotor temperatures were pretty similar. The big difference in looking at the rotor paint is that the inside of the rotor was running cooler than the outside, which explained why we were getting uneven pad wear inside and out. So, the 4-inch ducts, they look nice and big and cool, but if you can see the rotor, you're not getting 100% efficiency on the air that's going in there. And we had another, I got to tell you about this way and that way. We had a customer who had somebody working on their car who was smarter than everybody else in the room, and he actually put the rotors on backwards. And so he couldn't figure out why he was burning up brake pads all the time. Well, once the car got to us, it was pretty evident the rotors were on backwards, which meant they weren't cooling, they were pulling air in and building up heat. And like I said, more heat goes up, wear goes up, and he was wearing out his brakes. I wouldn't have left that out. It's pretty stout and heavy. Although we do have for the like on our race brakes, the Pro 4R, it's the 4-piston. Now this gets back to 4 and 6 piston. It all depends on the 4 and 6 piston. Our 6-piston race brakes, the Bear Extreme R's, are great brakes. I've got them front and rear on my car. We've got a number of customers that have them as well. They really haul the car down. But the where was I? I was talking about the 4-piston, 6-piston. I get so excited about this, my mind kind of runs off ahead of myself. It's 4-piston, 6-piston. So we used the big 6-piston brakes, and we worked for over a year with Bear to develop our own race brake package that would be unique to the Kenny Brown brand. And the genesis, the starting point, was back in 2011. Paul, my late son, started with a Bear 6-piston brake on his car for a World Challenge, and the World Challenge rule said no, you have to run a 4-piston. Bear developed a special 4-piston race brake for him, and he went on to just pretty much dominate the series and winning the championship. That was kind of the genesis, or what we started for our race brake pads, or race brakes, and we just developed, and we got so many features packed into it. It's got as many features into our race brake, 4-piston race brakes, as the Brembo GTRs, which are about 8,500 an axle set. We're less than half of that. And the thing is, though, with our 4-piston, it actually uses the same dimensional pad as my 6-piston race brake. So same brake pad, 6-piston. The only difference is on my 6-piston, the thickness of the pad is 0.71 inches, and the thickness of the pads of the race brake is 0.98, or basically a 1-inch thick brake pad. And thickness has a lot to do with wear too. OE brake pads are typically not that thick, and they wear out faster than a thick pad. You have to be mindful and watch your pad wear. Here's something, a little tip, for Hawk. How to read a Hawk. This is backwards again. Sorry. We're trying to figure out how to do that. We figured out if this was an iPhone, it'd be really easy to swap, but it's not so easy on an Android. But the last number, 0.67, that's the thickness of the pad. And then the first number, HB 193, that's actually the dimension of the pad. And so it's got the dimension and the thickness. And the letter G represents the compound, and for Hawk that means DTC 60, which I use on the back of my car. 70s in the front and 60s in the back. Although next year we're going to change some brake compounds. Questions?
We have lots of questions, so you need to determine when you're going to stop and.
Okay, we got lots of questions. Let me throw just a little more in on brake pads. You really have to watch your brake pads. Also, you go to the track, you need a lot of this stuff. Brake clean. I never go to the track with any less than 4 cans. You can get it. This is O'Reilly's. You can get it at Menards, just anywhere. A CRC is the best, but it's also the most expensive. And brake pad wear. I mean, it's really important to watch your brakes. When brakes get past the halfway point, the wear rate accelerates, and it kind of starts going up. When it gets down to like a third or a quarter, you need to just pull them off because they're not going to last. Now here's a pad that we took off. It was pretty much seen its life. You can see how thick it is, and you can see it's starting to get a lot of heat cracks in it. But the other thing you can kind of tell when they're getting bad is you can see that kind of reddish going around there. Now this is a pad that isn't quite ready to replace yet, and something interesting I want you to take a look at. There's something called the heat mark. I don't know if you can see that. There's a discoloration between there and there. That's the heat mark. As soon as that heat mark gets down to the backing plate, the wear on that brake pad is going to be a lot faster. So you can watch the heat mark as to when to get rid of your pads. The other little trick that I do is I mark the pads. Now I measured this, and the pad on here is roughly 460. So I took half of that and etched a mark, and then I divided it in 3 and etched another mark. Then what I did is I took a simple hacksaw blade, like this, and I made a groove that's between the half and a third. And that way you can just look down and see how much wear you've got. Once you get past, once that groove disappears, you need to be thinking about changing your pads. You can certainly save a pad like this, maybe use it for a practice on sometime, but I really wouldn't depend on it. So you watch your brake pad wear. It's really important. Yeah, what kind of pads are you guys using out there? I mean, we use Hawk and G-Lock. We're finding G-Lock is a little bit easier on rotors, and they get more compounds. And the thing about that braking compound, I mean, we've got a lot of brake. If you want to know, if you want to know what kind of brake pad is best for you, set up a 15-minute consult. I'll go through, we'll talk it through, and I'll come up with what I feel is the best compound for you, so you don't have to guess. I mean, putting a full race compound on somebody that's a novice is not a good match, because the brakes aren't ever going to get hot enough to work efficiently, and they're going to squeal and make dust. Putting an intermediate pad on for somebody that's an advanced guy that's driving really hard, threshold braking, not a good match, because they're going to stop, but you're going to have high heat and high wear. And the friction is going to go down. Remember, friction, heat, wear. They all kind of correlate. Heat goes up. If it's a racing pad, friction will stay the same, but wear will go up. Even on a race pad, the higher they get, the more they'll wear. And there's always a kind of main operating temperature for race pads, and also all the pads. And that's why you give me a call, call Carrie, set up a consult, and we'll kind of go through, and I'll come up with the best pads for you. Because I mean, I've got a lot of choices, and it's important that you get the right pad for your application. It's kind of, it's my saying, it's kind of like having a pro in your pocket. Call me up and we'll figure it out. Okay, now we're getting into some questions.
Okay, yeah, take a couple sips.
Oh, remember Join Speed Therapy. We're going to start putting more resources in there. With this virus thing, we're like really low on staff. I'm running behind on a few things, but we're going to be catching up here soon. And in case you're joining us again, I'm Kenny Brown. This is Kenny Cars and Coffee, or Cars and Coffee with Kenny. If you've been here a while, we have this debate going. So we've got some brake questions.
Okay, and I'm gonna start. There's so many. I'm gonna go from the top down,
okay. And
we may not be able to get to all of them today. Christopher Sauter, is the Boss ABS unit a hydraulic swap, or is the unit strictly an electric swap?
Strictly electric. I don't know. I'm going to take that back. Because in the Boss S cars, the Boss S cars, not the Boss S, the FR500S cars that I engineered for Mustang Challenge, I think they had a swap for the ABS, a performance swap. So, no, it's for both the hydraulic steering. Is that what you're referring to?
No, I think he's talking about braking. Let me see. ABS, Boss ABS unit, a hydraulic swap, or is it?
Oh, no, it's just, it's a module. It's just a little brain module. You unplug one and plug the other one in.
Okay, and then Joe Johnson, he's talking about his GT350 brakes. He's will not allow for pads like the 25 mil pads that he had on his Boss 302S. Is there a brake system which will fit on the Shelby with the offset I have on the wheels? I am running Need for Speed 6GR wheels.
I think so. We'll make a note of that and we'll check. I know that there is actually the Bear Extreme Plus. will fit on that. If you've got wheels that'll take a big brake, they'll fit on that, because on what we've been doing on a normal cars will do the Extreme Plus front and rear 15-inch rotors. And for the track cars or dedicated track cars, we can go up to the R calipers, which are a race caliper. And then we have a special, super special brake for the S550s. We don't call it a big brake package, we call it a massive brake package. And it's the GR6. And I should show you a picture, but the caliper is about this big. I mean, the caliper is bigger than a license plate. And it's huge. The pad is huge. Now, it has a thin pad, but the area of the pad is just massive. I mean, it's a big brake. And you talk about looking cool. Nobody's going to have a brake that pretty much covers got a 15-inch rotor, and the caliper just about covers the whole rotor. So yeah, we've got the extreme regular streams and the Stream Rs for the front and rear with 15-inch rotors. I think the back might be 14. I have to double check. But the answer is yes, we got big brake packages for the GT. I'm guessing they fit on the regular S550s. I don't know. I might have to check. I can tell you we have brakes for the regular S550s. I'll have to check and see if they fit the GT350.
Okay, and this is just a quick note. Doug Vanderbrink was asking for a link for the rotor temperature paint. And I know you're against this, Ken.
The what?
Rotor temperature paint. So what I'm doing is we're getting a lot of questions about where to purchase this, if we're selling it. Most of the things, we sell a lot of items. The only things that Ken...
The answer is yes.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm going to be listing, just putting some links in there to make it easier. And if you want additional links to what he's talking about, sign up for the Kenny Brown newsletter, and you can sign up on the Facebook page after you're finished.
Yeah, I mean, most of the stuff I talk about, I mean, if you've been on our website, it doesn't have like a gazillion parts from everybody. What's on the website is things that I use, things to me that I've proven out, I approve, it meets my standard of quality, performance, and value. So things that I talk about, yeah, you're going to find them on our website. This should be on there, I think. And then also, we don't have brake clean. Sorry, you got to get that at your local store. And then we've got the Motul, and we also have the Bear brake fluid. So yeah, we got that, and of course we got brake ducts.
So anyway, okay, here's the next question. Jim Flattery, we already answered his question. Bob Jones, how about some comments on pad bedding? You may want to cover this next week or something, but
yeah.
If you drive your car to the track and switch to track pads using the same rotors, it's a bit of a trick to get the track pads bedded. Also, what does pad squeal tell you?
Okay. Pad squeal tells you that typically if you got like a hard compound, there's not enough temperature. I know that if we were to drive my car around the street with the race pads in there, it is embarrassing as hell, because you pull up the stop sign and just the squeal is this, like, it's almost like fingernails on a chalkboard. And it depends on the pad, but if typically like on a track pad, if they're squealing, there's not enough temperature in them. What was the other question?
They're related to the same one. He switches his pads from track to street, and it's hard. It's a bit of a trick to try to bed them. Do you have any tricks for that?
Do I have a trick for switching from a street pad to a track pad and having to bed them? Yes. And I've got a great trick. We can get our G-Lock, the compounds I choose from G-Lock, we can get them pre-bedded. So you don't have to bed them, just drop them in and go. So yeah, call us up, I'll get you fixed up.
Okay, Wes Dunkel has a comment. He said when you were talking about the rotors like a centrifuge blower.
Yeah, that's right. It's just like centrifuge blower. It sucks the air from the inside, and with the vanes in the rotor, just pushes it out. That's why it's important to get cold air, as much cold air as you can to the inside of the eye of the rotor, as I call it.
And Ashley and Andy joined.
Oh, hello, Ashley and Andy.
You know who that is.
Yep.
Ashley, your niece? Okay. Warren Johnson, will you ever do you ever have to cool the rears? He has G-Lock 12s on the rear.
Typically, no. I mean, the rears don't see nearly as much. The easy way to tell, throw some of this stuff on the rear rotors. If you've got the 12s on the back, man, you're good to 1800 degrees. So, I mean, if you check, I think you're going to find your temperature is going to be, depending what rotor or what size rotor you have, it's going to be under 1,000 or under. But yeah, here's rotor paint. It's like the coolest stuff ever. Like I say, in the old days, you used to get to four different paints, which cost not quite 4 times as much as this, but it costs at least 3 times as much as this for the 4 colors. And this is just so much easier.
Okay, and then the question. This is a question for you. Have you used the Raybestos race pads yet?
Have I used Raybestos race pads? The answer is no, because I've never had the opportunity to test them. So I mean, I can't, because I only talk about stuff I know about, and I haven't had a chance to personally test them. So I don't use them, but I know they're out there. We've had people say we should try them, and at some point, when it might not be till next year when everything gets back to normalcy, that I do plan on trying some.
Okay, and Ellen Bell, what about EBC yellow for track days?
Okay, EBC yellow. I don't know the temperature rating on those. You might have to look it up. I know that we have some EBC pads here. I think we've got blue and yellow. I can't remember. I just don't remember what the compounds are, what the temperature is. So go on their website and see if they'll tell you what temperature range they are, and that'll tell you if they're good enough for track days. Remember, novice is going to be in the 800, intermediate guys up to 1,000, and hard charging guys 1,200.
Okay, and Jim Flattery's mentioned that the G-Locks are really nice on the rotors.
Yeah, Jim's saying that the G-Locks are really nice on the rotors, and that's we've been getting that report back quite a bit. It's a really nice brake pad, which we're switching a lot of our customers to that. It's easier on rotors. We get them pre-bedded, and they cost less than Hawk. So 1, 2, 3, you're a winner.
And they're specifically not on our website yet because you want people to.
Oh yeah. Okay. Now this is something not on our website. The reason not on our website yet is that I have to come up with some sort of chart to kind of set out all the compounds and figure it out, and I haven't really got there. So this is this thing, set up a 15-minute, call me, I'll set you up with the right compounds. And I don't want to put all these brake pads on the website because it's going to confuse people. And I'd rather one-on-one tell you what you need so you get the right pad for how you're driving.
Tim Tomasak, when upgrading from OE Brembo's S197 to Performance 4-piston Kenny Brown Bear Pro 4Rs, does a hydraulic system or ABS module need to be changed?
No. It's totally transparent. Bear does the engineering so that you get the volume of the 4-piston Rs matches the volume of the factory, so that it's totally transparent. Okay. And somebody asked me why we use 4-piston instead of 6-piston. Well, there's a really good answer. Weight. We can use the same brake pad as the 6-piston rotor. Okay, so we've got the same amount of surface area and the same amount of bite, and with getting the spacing and the size of the pistons right, we get the same amount of clamping. But with a 4-piston, it's less weight, and we have ours are specially lightened. Our race calipers are specially lightened. They take out weight that don't hurt the integrity of the caliper. And they've got like 6 super strong bolts clamping it, where other people have 4. And the cool thing is that because it's a track race caliper, it's on the top. It's got a little clip. You lift the clip up, pull the pads out, drop the new pads in, put the clip on. It's like a 30-second pad change. A lot better in the old days when we had to take the calipers off and change the pads. I got a good brake pad story for you. With the Celine program, I can't remember which race we were at, but around the shop we had these little, you've seen them, these little totes. It's got a handle on it. It's got like 2 sides on it to put stuff in. And around the shop we kind of used those, put tools in. We were working around the cars. and we were doing a brake change. I can't remember where it was. Maybe Nelson Ledges for the 24-hour. I can't remember. But anyway, Rex was doing a brake. He had his big gloves on, and he did, because I forget what I was doing. So I was on the outside of the car, and he did the left front, and he had his big heavy gloves on, pulled the pads out, and put the new ones in, and then he picked up his little tote and went around the car, and the brake pads were still sitting on the asphalt. They just completely melted right through that plastic thing. So yeah, they're hot when they come off. So if you take them off, when you take hot brake pads off, now typically you're not going to deal with hot brake pads, but if you do, be sure to set them someplace where nobody's going to get burnt and they have a chance to cool.
Okay, Bob Jones has an interesting question. Would you ever put spacers between the pads and the pistons when the pads wear to keep the pistons deeper in their bores?
No.
Yeah, okay.
And the reason for that is, so putting spacers behind the pads, when the pads wear to keep the pistons in the bores, I mean, you can't let them wear down that far. I mean, you've got to be thinking, like I say, once it gets past half and before a third, get them off there, because they're going to wear so fast. It's going to create so much heat, and again, if they do wear out and the backing plate comes all the way up to the rotor, there's a chance that the pistons are going to pop out. So the answer is no spacer, fresh brake pads.
Okay, let's see. Everybody's listing their pads. Let me read a few of them. Brad uses a Hawk DC 70 front and DC 60 rear.
Yeah, that's what I was using on my car.
And Dan Grams uses DC 60s, works great on the back. PFC's 8s on the front. Really high temp pad.
Okay, I haven't used PFCs for years and years. I think we used them. I can't remember. Maybe it was in World Challenge in like 2003.
And Christopher Sauter's using a Brembo Red street and track pads. They last about 8 to 10 track days for me. However, I'm still an intermediate driver. Okay,
that's good information. I'm not sure what a Brembo Red is, but you should be able to look up the compound and the temperature.
Tim Thomasuk is asking, do backing plates benefit fluid cooling?
No. If they're stainless steel, they might. When we get into our race calipers, we use high grade steel cylinders, but they're also castellated around the top so air can get to them. Back in, this is going back to like 93 World Challenge, we had to run the best brake we could come up with back then was the PFC 2-piston off the Corvettes, and it was not PFC. I can't remember. It's from Australia, and everybody was using that same brake, but everybody was also having problems with overheating, and everybody but us. And the reason was I took the pistons out and we castellated them. First of all, I got I can't remember, stainless steel pistons from somebody in the aftermarket, and then we castellated them, which means we'll put little grooves all the way around so that there's air getting to them. So we didn't have the overheating problems everybody else did. But as far as, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's best just get the 600 degree brake fluid, bleed them every day, and I don't think you need that.
Okay, Tim Allen says he loves the performance brake tech that you're doing right now.
Thank you.
And Dell Hughes is he's telling us what he has. He has 2 cars. On his 96 Cobra, he uses Cobalts on the front and DTC 60s on the rear. On his 2000 Cobra R, he uses front caliper and stock rears. I'm not sure. And then Tim Allen has a question. Can pads get too old while on car? Not from brake overuse, but just from being on the car.
Oh boy, that's a question I don't know I have a good answer to. Can brake pads get too old? Anything can get too old. I mean, if they've been on the car for a while and you go to the track, they're probably going to burn up fast. And if they've been on there for a while, I'd want to get some fresh brake pads for the track. And what was the first pad that Dell used?
He uses the Cobalt.
Cobalt. Yeah, we actually had a deal with them for the Mustang Challenge in '09 for the Cobalt pads. They worked really good. I had no complaints, and I think we got them pre-bedded too, which is anytime you get a pre-bedded pad, it's like score for you, because bedding is a process that we got to talk about another day. Bedding pads and seasoning rotors are really, really important if you're putting new pads or new rotors on. Real quickly, my rule of thumb is new pads, old rotors, new rotors, old pads. That seems to, when you're seasoning the rotors, old pads will be better than using a new pad. And when you're bedding a pad, brake pad, old rotor be better than for the pads and new rotors.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes left. Christopher is, can you put a track setup sheet in the Speed Therapy Society? I really want to start saving some data from my track sessions.
Track setup sheet.
Yeah, I think we have something we can.
Yeah, let me see. I mean, we've got the tire temperature thing. Is that? I think that's already on there.
No, I haven't listed that yet.
Okay, we've got a tire temperature thing. We haven't really got super deep into tire temperatures. But maybe we'll do that next week. We'll get deep into tire temperatures, and we've got a chart that I use, and you know, we'll put a PDF up there so you can print them off. And anytime anybody buys any of our brake stuff, they'll get like a tablet with them, with it. So, yeah, we'll be doing that in the coming weeks. Then we have, I think I've got. Do we do the thing on car prep? Is that on there?
Yeah, that's on there.
Checklist for car preps on there.
Yeah, and then just a setup sheet. So we'll work on that.
Yeah, I've got setup sheets, and I'll even put an example on there of like I've got some from the Mustang Challenge, and there's like I said before, we did a setup and a set down. Set up before we go to the track, and even though when we make adjustments, everybody's taking copious notes. But you always miss something. That's why when we get back to the shop, we do a set down, which we did the exact same thing in the setup, just except all we do is taking measurements. So we've got a comparative, like that's just how we enter the race, which means the next time we go to that track, that's where we start the race.
Okay, this is kind of interesting little conversation going on here. Larry Martin wants to know, do you do not use street compounds on your race rotor and then switch back and forth? In other words, can you switch the race pads and the street pads on
yeah,
the race rotor?
Like I kind of answered that earlier. It kind of depends on the pads themselves. If you've got a race pad that's super high metallic and a street pad that's super high organic, there's a chance that that you're going to get some kind of transfer. Now, I'm not a brake pad engineer, so I'm just kind of going with my experience. It's like I think with the G-locks, their compounding is so similar. There really wouldn't be a problem with that because they're similar in compounding. But if you're going to like a high metallic to like a standard organic, there's a chance that you could swap some material back and forth, or going back, if you got organic and you go to the track, you could get some metal pickup off the pads. That's kind of what I've noticed. That may or may not be true. Like I say, I'm not a brake pad engineer.
And this may be related. Don't mix pads on the same rotor.
Don't mix pads on the same rotor. You're getting depending on the pads. By mixing pads, I mean you can, like if you used a Hawk 70 and then went to a Hawk 60, I mean there's no difference there. If you, yeah, I mean it just depends on the pads themselves. If you're switching pads back and forth, you always want to kind of stay with the same manufacturer, the same sort of compounding strategy. In the rotors, when's the time to change rotors? This is another important thing.
We'll probably end with this.
We'll end with this. When is the time to change rotors? First of all, if you're going on track, you absolutely have to have, even if you're running stock calipers, you have to have a two-piece slotted rotors. The reason is first of all, they're lighter than the one-piece rotors that come from the OE, but they cool better, and because of the aluminum center, they don't transfer that rotor heat into the wheel bearing. And if you don't get in the wheel bearing, that doesn't get in the wheel, it doesn't get in the tire. So we absolutely have to have the two-piece slotted rotors. Also, we talked about the slots helping the brake pad wear and cooling. Now, when you'll start to see, if you use the brakes really hard, week in, week out, you'll start to see little, I call them spider cracks. Little tiny cracks will start to appear. Spider cracks are okay. That's kind of common. Now, when it's not okay is if you have a crack and you can actually catch your fingernail on that crack, throw the rotors away, and don't never ever try to resurface a racing rotor. You just don't do that. But as soon as you can feel a crack, throw the rotors away and put another one on. We treat rotors as disposable, just like brake pads. And the other nice thing about the two-piece rotors is when you do need a rotor change, you don't have to buy the whole thing. You just get the outer ring, take one off, put the other one on, and you're good to go. So, one more question?
Yeah, let's see. Brake pad life. If you're not using brake pads, how long of a life can you continue? How long do they last?
Brake pad life, man, it depends on the brake compound and how hard you use them.
No, but not even using them, just sitting on the car without
just
using
sitting on the car? I mean, they've got volatiles in them. That's why when you bed brakes, the whole purpose of bedding a brake pad is to get the volatiles out. That's the gases that are in there. Like when you're bedding a brake pad, you go through the process, and when it gets to the point where the brakes get really hard and you're not stopping, I mean, that's when they're bedded. That means you got all the volatiles out. I mean, I don't have a good answer. If they sit, certainly there's some volatiles that are going to escape, and volatiles are not a bad thing to get rid of. So I mean, everything gets old. I mean, if you're going to go on track, I mean, try to keep everything fresh. If you've got pads been sitting around for 4 or 5 years, I mean, you might use them on the street. I wouldn't take them to the track.
Okay, so I think we have a few more questions left. We'll answer them next week. And if anybody has any additional brake questions, pads, rotors,
You got
whatever.
a squeaky amount of time for one more quick question.
Okay, I got to look for one now.
Oh, no. Threw off her game.
What factors might make an unused pad worthy of replacing with new?
Factors make an unused pad worthy of...
What factors make an unused pad worthy of replacing with new?
I think
you just answered that.
Yeah, I just think age.
Okay.
I mean, if it's a couple years old, I wouldn't be afraid. But if it's sitting around 4 or 5 years, I think I wouldn't trust it.
Do you want to touch on brake bleeders real quick?
Brake bleeders.
Yeah, this is a comment. It says it's okay to use speed bleeders for intermediate to advanced track cars.
Question is, speed bleeders okay? Well, for those who don't know, speed bleeders kind of like, when you bleed the brakes, you have one person in the car pump, and the other letting it out, getting the air out. Speed bleeders kind of screw into the caliper, and they've got a check valve, so that you can actually, one person you can bleed your own brakes. You just pump it, it'll let the fluid out, won't let air in. Yeah, I mean, I see nothing wrong with it. Just be sure that when you switch the back to the regular bleeder, that you don't let any air in. Remember to join Speed Therapy Facebook group, Speed Therapy Society Facebook group. Well, maybe I'll talk about tire temperatures and setup sheet next time, because Herschel was asking about setup sheets. Now we get that on the into the group for you. So it's been I'm glad you guys had enough time this morning to take a break and watch what we're doing. And we'll be back next week. I think we're going to tire temperature setup sheets. I think your subjects that came up today, we'll look at them, and also keep your questions coming, because I kind of craft what I'm going to talk about based on what you guys want to know. It's I can talk for days on what I want to talk about, but I'm more interested in what you want to learn about, and that's what I'm here to do, is to try to help you learn. So until next week, kind of stay safe, and the weather's getting nice, and it's getting pretty tempting. I also saw some of the driving clubs are starting to open up track days in July and August. So we're getting close, guys. It's just a few more weeks or so, and we'll be able to get